Now, Max Verstappen continues to lead and control his destiny. If Verstappen fails to finish in the top 10 for the remaining races, his score can drop to 16.25, which means he will still finish ahead of all of the Formula E drivers. However, Alex Palou will be the new leader if that happens and his score is finalized. So the question is, who can outscore Alex Palou? Now, in MotoGP, Pecco Bagnaia and Jorge Martin are both mathematically in. There's no NASCAR driver, and in supercars, Brody Kostecki and Shane Van Gisbergen are the defending champions. Now, there's no WRC driver has left since the part-time performance of Sebastien Ogier has taken too many points away. So, Jackson, Alex Palou had a 100% top 10 finish rate in IndyCar, 5 wins, only 7 finishes outside the podium. Does this level of dominance Palou had in IndyCar feel underappreciated?
It's the Max versus Alex argument that we've had for a while here, and in regular sports terms, would you rather have a sports team that absolutely dominates 100 to nothing every weekend, or would you want to have a team that kind of manages to find a comeback every single weekend? And I think as dominant as Max has been, Alex and that whole Chip Ganassi crew has just been someone who through the chaos has just somehow found ways to win out of seemingly nowhere. It's that kind of Chip Ganassi gene that Scott Dixon and Mike Hull have had for so long, and I think it's finally starting to rub off on Alex. And don't get me wrong, both of these guys, regardless, are totally going to have a celebration worth, a season worth celebrating. But it's always hard to fully appreciate IndyCar the same way that F1 is appreciated, because for so long it's considered the MLS of open wheel racing, the retirement league. And I really, really do think, Alex, that we're now finally starting to show people it's so much more.
I totally agree. And I feel like there's a lot of factors that might go into why this kind of season for Alex Palou is underappreciated. I mean, you have the contract drama, you have the TV schedule is very spaced out. People might forget about the series here and there. I get it. But in like 5-10 years, people are going to look back on this season and be like, oh my gosh, that happened.
Full timer.
Like, wow, this is like, it's unbelievable. Like, his worst finish was 8th, if I'm not mistaken, and it happened twice. One was at Iowa, and I forget where the other one was, but just remarkable. Like, we're going to be looking back at this and just thinking like, wow, we were lucky to see that. Like, it might not have been the most exciting thing to watch sometimes, but like, this guy, Alex Palou, he's something special for sure.
A guy who's finished every single race this year, 99% of the laps, the only exception there being a lap down from the leader in Iowa. I struggle to think of a driver who's consistently finished in the top 10 every single race in IndyCar, Esha.
Yeah, definitely. And Jackson, you mentioned Max Verstappen before, with Verstappen over a second faster than everyone in Japan. Despite McLaren's upgrades and the perfect season gone, Red Bull still seems way ahead of the competition. Now, Lewis Hamilton did say that he fears that Mercedes won't be able to catch up to Red Bull in 2024. And we know that Mercedes has been seen as the toughest competitor for Red Bull so far. But lately, McLaren looks fast and Ferrari has that win. So, do you guys think Hamilton is saying this to hide something that Mercedes may have? Or could the Silver Arrows be in trouble and be third or fourth best behind the McLaren and the Ferrari?
We know Mercedes is the team that likes to cook up some maniacal things technologically. We talk about the DAS, the moving steering wheel and caster system a couple of years ago, and I think we're seeing maybe this liftoff of performance here in these last couple of races, because I truly believe they are all chips in on 2024 in their car.
Yeah, it's interesting. Lewis Hamilton's kind of known for kind of hyping up something that's not exactly true, because he said in the car before, oh, my tires are dead, and then he lays down fastest lap and he's fine. Like, he's done that kind of thing before. I don't know if necessarily he's doing that here. He might be. But, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. I would like to see Mercedes be more competitive again. I hate, this is weird to say, but I'd like to see Lewis Hamilton win one more time. Like, that's weird to say in itself, but that'd be really cool. I think it'll happen too. But still, it's like, are we going to see it happen? Like, I hope so, but we'll have to wait and see.
I still remember. I think it was after he won his after he won his third championship. Lewis Hamilton was being interviewed on 60 Minutes, and he said, "I want to do this until I'm 37." And now he's 37, 38. And he's there are rumors that maybe he's got another 5 years left to give to this sport. So clearly he had a change of heart somewhere along there. If he does end up staying that long again, I think it's inevitable. Mercedes, are a good enough team with a good enough car that, there will be the right combination one of those days. He'll at least so much as win one more race. But in terms of being able to fight for an 8th world championship, like we were saying at the top of the show, McLaren's back on the up. Ferrari, always seems to bring a fast car, and we wonder if this is finally going to be the year they break through, and then they, usually self-destruct, unfortunately. But and then you got Red Bull, obviously, who look just absolutely unstoppable right now. So again, I know Lewis has faith in his team that they can take these next 6 months or whatever it's going to be and focus on 24 and try to develop a worthy challenger to Red Bull. But as he said, it's going to be very difficult to do so because they are just so far and away the most dominant team that we've seen in many, many years. At the very least, possibly ever. Nobody's ever won 10 races in a row. Nobody's ever, achieved a perfect season, which we all thought might be on the cards potentially until Singapore. I mean, it's just been absolutely unbelievable what that team has been able to do. But then again, so was what Mercedes did for that 8-year stretch from 14 to 21, where they never lost to constructors, and they only lost one of the drivers at the very end there. So we'll see what they can do.
Yeah, definitely, guys. And, Alex, as you mentioned, I think this is a hard question to answer because on one hand, Hamilton could be hiding something and, Mercedes might have some insane new technology, as I think Jackson mentioned, that they might pull next season. But I think that the most important question here is not who's going to be second, third, or fourth spot, because we know it's most likely going to be either the Mercedes, Ferrari, or McLarens that are in that second to fourth place finishing for next season. But who's going to be first? Is it going to stay Red Bull? I think that with the past 3 or so seasons that we've seen, I think that's most likely what's going to happen. But I think that the goal right now for everyone should be to try to beat Red Bull rather than, settling for that second or third or fourth place finish.
And I think that's what everyone wants to do, Esha. It's just the issue is with just this dominance on these new regulations we've seen from Red Bull in the past 2 years. They've already set themselves up to kind of coast to the finish of each season and just already kind of go 50-50 on focusing for the next year. And I know that the technical innovation is what makes this sport so exciting. And I love it as much as anyone else, but especially in this century, we've had just such a issue of strings of championships from Schumacher to Vettel to Hamilton and now to what seemingly is going to be Max. Now, I don't want to say that's going to be forever. Adrian Newey said himself, I don't totally quote me on this, but Newey said he doesn't want to be around too much longer. Max says he doesn't just want to stay here and win, and the record isn't something that's a concern for him. So I don't know. It's for sure a problem, but it's very much looking like this is going to be another era of Red Bull domination, as much as I really don't want to say that.
I mean, Max could say that, but what is he signed through? I think 28 or something stupid, ridiculous like that in terms of a commitment to this team. I mean, the second he no longer has that dominant car, he's going to be wishing that he was back to the glory days of 2022 and 2023. So I don't know. I've never really bought those comments from him. I know exactly what you're talking about, Jackson, but I think Max is going to be in the sport for a long time. And I think I said on Twitter this morning, if Max wins out, he'll have 54 wins by the end of the year. He'll pass Vettel for third all time. I think Lewis and Michael need to start counting. Because
can I throw you a curveball on that argument? Because he is a guy that does so much racing outside of Red Bull already, just weekend stuff in junior formulas. But you talk about some of the esports stuff he's done with Team Redline on iRacing. Not a lot of open wheel stuff, a lot of endurance racing. I think he's genuinely a guy that could feel right at home in the World Endurance Championship or in IMSA. And I think Max potentially knows he's got the potential to be a guy in contention for the Triple Crown.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess to counter that, he turns 26 next week, right? Like that's something I would see maybe 8 to 10 years down the road still. It's into the early 2030s. So, I mean, I think he's still got several years left in Formula One. He's certainly contractually bound at this point. Then again, Nico Rosberg signed an extension and then won the title and said, I'm out of here. So, I guess contracts are just nothing but pieces of paper these days. If you find the right clause in there, you can break them off. But I at least for the next several years, I think we're going to see Max Verstappen around here. And maybe he's not going to have as down in the cars he's got this year. Maybe Mercedes will be able to catch up and he and Lewis Hamilton can replicate that epic season we got a couple of years ago. That would certainly be more exciting for the fans than what we've got in the last couple of years. But I think Verstappen's here to stay for a while. Again, I don't necessarily know, but I buy into those comments 100%.
Tell you what, until 2026, if the regs are still good, Max will probably still be here. If not, go run elsewhere with Red Bull badging all over him until that contract expires.
No, that's fair. He's got nothing left to prove here. He's going to be a triple world champion and top 5 already in wins. Yeah, I certainly understand the argument, but again, that heated rivalry with Lewis, maybe you want to surpass Lewis's wins record, which nobody ever thought Lewis would break Michael's record. It's going to be very interesting several years here. We'll see.
And following this conversation between the two of you, I've jumped between both sides. Jackson says something and I agree with him, and then Ben says something and I agree with him. And it's just been a back and forth. But at the end of the day, I think that Max Verstappen, overall, his domination so far, when I think of the other drivers, the newer drivers that we've seen like Oscar Piastri and potentially Liam Lawson if he comes to Formula One permanently or full-time, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, I, in a way, feel bad for those drivers because as good as they are, I just feel like with the way Max is, if he doesn't decide to leave Formula One on his own, those drivers are never really going to get a chance.
And you want those guys to have their time in the sun.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, I feel like if he doesn't leave, they're not going to get a chance to be crowned world champion.
Well, and let me just say, things can change very quickly in this sport. It wasn't, go back 10 years. Sebastian Vettel was on a stretch of 4 consecutive world championships. He ended the 2013 season winning 9 races in a row. And then all of a sudden, Daniel Ricciardo gets in that Red Bull after Mark Webber retires. The regulations change, and Mercedes win all the 3 races that year. And 3 races that Red Bull do win, it's Ricciardo and not Vettel. So I think, Vettel looked like he was maybe going to be on that path to pass Schumacher's wins and championships record, and that ultimately didn't happen, and he moved to Ferrari and won several more races there, but he could never quite replicate that same level of success. So, Max is certainly doing everything right at the moment, but there are no guarantees in the sport. We know that much for sure.